What do I got to do? Sell feet pics to get my paintings seen on Instagram?
Yes.
Like, what's going on? Twitter's on fire. I don't know what to do. There's a new social media every single day. Everything's convoluted. I just want to post my little pictures so that art directors see them and will hire me and give me lots of money. That's my only goal.
Yes.
Tim, Gold, Von Art, Mr. Von Art. Social media has felt a little off, especially for the artist community lately. And I know that you've, been in that community for a long time and you've done really well on social media. So I really wanted to get your thoughts on the state of social media for artists currently. So I've got a couple questions for you.
Yes.
So the big new thing is Threads. I thought we'd start off with that. How do you feel about Threads, and how do you think it mixes up the playing field?
Okay, so I know we have different opinions on this, but Threads was very exciting the first 3 days for sure. And I think part of it was because everyone felt alive on it again. It didn't feel like it was a push for sales. It wasn't just this like thing you felt obligated to do. People wanted to be on it. And you saw like a glimpse of what social media and what Instagram used to be years ago. And I think that's why it was very exciting. I don't know. This is where I do agree with you though. I don't know if it will hold up, because I think all social medias right now, for the most part, they lack that sense of community as a whole. But when the internet started becoming more of a social media focus, I think it was 2006, 2007, Facebook was created. And all of a sudden, everyone just wanted to feel a part of something larger than themselves. So for artists, I had to look this up. It wasn't until DeviantArt in 2010 that I joined, but DeviantArt was like the hub where everyone would post. And it was kind of collectively agreed upon that like that's where people would post their art, and that's where you could find other artists. And yes, there were other websites at the time, and obviously you saw smaller ones pop up, like you saw your Tumblrs and ArtStations. And then it was in, what did I write down? July of 2011 that I joined the Facebook page, because at that time you had like personal pages and then you could have business pages. So for a little while, I felt like DeviantArt and Facebook would be the place where you would just post your art when you would finish, and it would be your way of getting out there. Now, Instagram became really big around like 2015, 2016. I joined, what did I write? The end of 2014. And I was just using it the same way I was posting on DeviantArt and Facebook. It was very much like you just post your images and then you respond to comments. But we weren't hyper fixated on engagement, making sure that we're posting at the right time. Like, it wasn't about that. It genuinely was about sharing your work with the world and finding a response to it.
More of like a community aspect than like a business driven venture.
A million percent yes. And Instagram became like the agreed upon by everyone, not just artists, because I feel like all artists use DeviantArt, but the general public wasn't really on DeviantArt as much. Mm-hmm. So I feel like Instagram was the way where whatever field you're in, not just art, but whatever field, that was your place to post. That was your place to get your outreach. And it worked for a very long time. There was like a golden age between 2015 and early 2020, I want to say, where Instagram was kind of great for a lot of artists. Fast forward to where we're at now in July 2023 as of this recording, and it is so convoluted, but there are so many platforms that we feel obligated to post on nowadays, because it's no longer just like the one hub that everyone agreed upon that was like the community. There are so many different websites and so many different social media platforms nowadays that we feel spread thin, not only as the artist, but the people on the other end. They don't know which website to go on anymore. They don't know which social media is popular. And I have a theory, and I kind of want to hear if you agree with this or not. So when people go to Instagram nowadays, it almost feels like they're being marketed at, or it feels like it's pushing for something. It doesn't feel like as genuine anymore. But then you go to a platform like TikTok, and really a lot of the purpose behind that is to entertain people. So if you were on the other side of this, you're the general public, would you rather go to a platform to feel like you're being sold something, or would you go to a platform where its purpose is to entertain you?
Obviously the entertainment one, as like someone who isn't trying to run a business is a lot more enticing.
Mm-hmm.
But I also worry for like visual artists who might not want to, jump into video content. Is there a good platform for them just to, make that community, have that entertainment, and still do their art? And then on the other hand, like, this is a job, making art, and like, we still have to pay rent in a way. Like, it might be my dream job, but, it's still the way I make money and make a living. Instagram almost feels like a necessity in a lot of ways. So when it's not working quite at 100%, I get a little worried. And even at shows and stuff, like, the crowds will come up and they'll be like, oh, what's your Instagram? What's your Instagram? And before, it seemed like those people who would like add you there or on whatever other site would be active, like kind of participants on the website. And now it kind of feels more like a phone book almost. They're like, oh, I need to add you to like my index of artists, but I'm not actually going to go on there and scroll. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels off. And I think that's because it's not necessarily fun to be on that website anymore.
No.
Like you said, it feels very marketing heavy. And like, if you're in the market to buy something, then maybe people go on there. But like, the user base is still crazy, but I don't know if the active user base is crazy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I feel a lot of people might be on Instagram, but they're not like on it the same way they are on other platforms. Like when they're on TikTok, I feel like they're way more inclined to engage with it some way, whether it's liking it, thinking it's funny, or sharing it with one of their friends, being like, oh, this is a funny video. And it's become more focused on entertainment, where I do feel like Instagram's become kind of stale. And I know you were a little late to the Threads party, but the first 2 days on Threads felt so good because it felt like the golden era of Instagram. What was nice is, for the first time in years, I felt like I was using the platform to actually find new artists to like follow. And I mean, I haven't done that on Instagram or Twitter in so long. Like maybe if I accidentally stumble upon someone. But what's kind of gross for me to even admit out loud, but a lot of times when I'm on the Discover page on Instagram, I'm almost doing more research of why did this post do well, rather than like me get excited about finding art that inspires me. It was more like trying to figure out how to replicate a similar response within my own posts. But I shared with Dustin, and I'm sure you'll put it on the screen or something, where my engagement is so much worse than it was even 2 years ago. And, for a lot of us, that was the case. I didn't know that at first, though. So I personalized a lot of like the lack of growth and the disengagement. And it can be extremely detrimental to make your self-worth feel less than. And I didn't realize how much of my like value as a person was tied up in how well I was doing on Instagram. So thankfully I've been able to break away from that this past year. But what has been kind of rough for me to think about, like a younger artist joining any of these platforms now, and I don't want to skip around with the questions here. I know one of the last ones are about this, but I feel very terribly for an artist trying to make it nowadays. I hope Threads can carry some of that creative spark back, but if they don't focus on community, I feel like it'll go down the same route that Instagram went down, that I feel like Twitter is kind of going down right now, and we'll see. And with short form video format kind of taking over definitely last year, this year it seems like a little bit more of a question mark. And as you and I have talked about this, Dustin, it feels like YouTube seems to be the one that's kind of holding strong, because there's not like another platform that seems to be overtaking YouTube for long video format. Whereas if you're doing static post or short video format, there are so many. And actually, okay, are you ready for, like, just off the top of my head, I was thinking of like, where would an artist post nowadays? And I wrote down DeviantArt, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, ArtStation, CG Society, Pinterest, and then now Threads. And then if you're kind of on the outskirts, you could even do Reddit. But then if you're doing like professional posting, you might be doing Patreon, your own website, Kickstarter, Etsy, Behance. And then if you're doing video format, you might be doing YouTube, Instagram Reels, TikTok, and Twitch. And
see, this is my biggest concern. Like, there's not a clear winner, especially especially for like visual artists, because everything's moving to video format, which like you can still make video format as a visual artist, but as like a newbie just trying to learn how to draw, learning how to edit at the same time isn't necessarily ideal. And then it's like, where do you go, right? Like Instagram was like the perfect place, and then you could do, you know, double dip on Twitter if you wanted, but it just doesn't seem as viable anymore. And us with established followings are even struggling. How does somebody just breaking into like even pick what platform to like commit their time to? Because it is a time commitment.
That's the thing I wish people understood more, is I almost feel like half of my day is more dedicated to things that aren't art than actually drawing. I feel like half my day is like figuring out the best marketing posts, editing it in Photoshop, or especially if we're doing short video formats. I mean, that could be a whole day where you're just making one reel if you really want to make it nice. I think if you are an artist going into this field, I don't know if I have the best advice for you. I would say the platforms that seem to be holding the most ground right now would be, I would say YouTube would be number one, but that also means you have to be okay with doing video format and some form of recording. So not as much for static posts, but I want to say Threads has potential for static posting. And then if you're really trying to get seen or get like a lot of exposure quickly, I think TikTok actually would be my vote on which one I think is the best out of all of them.
I think I want to ask you a bit more, or I want to push you a bit more on the Threads thing.
Yes.
Do you, because it did feel great the first couple days, right? Like we have established followings, it's linked to Instagram, like there's just people flooding in, and we're getting like a lot of engagement right away, and it felt great. It really did. And you know, I like the way that my images look on the site, and it looks clean and it's nice and it's a fun time.
Yeah.
But I worry that, again, people without established followings don't really have an incentive to then like use Threads over another website. Like, why move from Twitter, even though it's on fire, over to Threads, which like Meta's also on fire? You know what I mean? Like the Zuck just isn't as publicly facing on fire as like Elon. But
you are right.
You know, none of these websites really have me like feeling like I'm in a safe space. So like it just doesn't seem appealing to, you know, a newbie or general audience. Like as a creator, we have an incentive to go there because it's moving our following and we don't have to start from zero. But a new person has to start from zero either way. So why does Threads look, you know, better than like Blue Sky or the other 10 social medias that came out this week?
That's right. I didn't even mention Blue Sky. You're right. I think for people that already have followings or somewhat of an established fan base, Threads was amazing. But if you were starting from scratch, it is probably pretty horrible because it doesn't even implement hashtags at this time. And mind you, they might put it in eventually, but as of July 2023, there aren't hashtags. So if you're a newer artist, yeah, I guess it would just be a place to find established artists and maybe have more of a chance to interact with them.
Our art challenge is dead. Hashtags don't work on Instagram. What once was an easy way to grow, are they still viable? I think one of the, like, I know the way I started growing, again, you know, DeviantArt, Instagram, all that other stuff, was through like, you know, it was fan art with like niche communities. You could look up the hashtags, really easy to find, or it was art challenges. And again, it relied so much on hashtags, on people who were participating in that and wanted to look at what other people were doing. And art challenges at the time, like 2016, 2017, were so popular that if you join one, it was like instant growth, even if you were kind of bad at it. And it just feels like, you know, art challenges still exist. Like, you know, there's Drawtober, Inktober, all those things. As we know. But it just, like, the growth doesn't seem there as much. And I worry that, like, if Instagram becomes not as viable, like, what happens to those communities? Like, it doesn't seem like there's a place for them to go. Like, you know, there's not hashtags like hashtags isn't really the biggest thing on
Yeah.
Twitter. Like it's there, but it's more for like the news cycle, and I don't see people really joining in art challenges as much. Like that could change, certainly. Threads doesn't have it, and like nobody's like posting their art challenges on TikTok. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah, I think when it comes to community challenges, I don't know how it was for you when you went to school, but I remember, I think it was CG Hub back in the day did like these big art challenges that had a theme. I forgot the ones, but or CG Society maybe, but they had these contests where every artist from like around the country, at least in America, were like joining these. And I remember my art friends that I went to school with at the time, like we all felt obligated to join in because it was like the sense of belonging. But because that has been spread so thin, it's very difficult to run an art challenge where not only does people are people aware of it, but people want to join because what benefit do they get out of it? And I think, at least, obviously I can't speak for other art challenges, but I can speak for our own. I think your idea of focusing more inward rather than growth might be the actual solution, and having it be focused with like Discord communities and have it be more of like a fun celebration where you feel a part of it, but you actually feel a part of it. Where I think a lot of people were using art challenges the last 5 years as a way to like get more exposure. And there, obviously I did the same thing before I did Drawtober. I participated in Drawloween, which is a different challenge, and it was for exposure essentially. It was to challenge myself to see if I could do a drawing every day for 31 days. But I think a lot of artists go into challenges looking for growth of some level. And moving forward, I don't know if that will be the reason people join challenges anymore. I could be wrong on that, and I don't know what that looks like. And I know we've talked about what happens if Drawtober can't sustain itself off of, Instagram or off of these social media platforms that we could rely on in the past. What happens? And it would be sad if we had to cut Drawtober. And I'm going to do my best not to let that happen, but it is very difficult thinking, what does it look like in 2023 on to have art challenges that are actually not only sustainable, but people would want to participate in them. And we're going to try to answer that this year. We're going to see if having it be like very community focused works. But I really think if the goal is going to be growth for a lot of these challenges, I don't know if that's going to be viable moving forward with the direction that everything's going. And obviously with the biggest challenge being Inktober, I'm curious to see what steps they take to adapt to the modern art world, because especially with Instagram not performing the way it was and relying so heavily on hashtags to be seen, I just don't see a lot of younger artists clicking like the hashtag of anything and like actually looking through it that way. I do think having it feel more personalized or more personal and community centric with like Discord, I think that could be the route, but obviously you're speaking on a much smaller scale. So I feel like this year is a big experiment pot for at least us running Drawtober. I'm curious to see how it works, but it would be sad if in like 2024 on art challenges don't really exist in the same manner or fashion that we got to grow up with art challenges, because they were so fun and they were genuinely engaging. And it would be a bummer if like the next generation couldn't also experience that.
And Drawtober Discord link down below,
Yeah.
gotta plug it.
And I should also mention this was Dustin's idea, so he gets all the credit for trying to bring it more into a community, and so we'll see. So if it fails, it's your fault, Dustin.
Yeah. I'm just gonna cut that part anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I guess so. Like, Discord is a great community platform that's working really well. YouTube is a great entertainment platform that's working really well. TikTok, still seems to be very popular for entertainment. Instagram almost went too businessy.
Yeah.
Twitter's on fire. Threads and like Blue Sky and the other 10 of them like just aren't proven. So like trying to make a living as an artist, like there's a place to find community, right? We can join these Discord groups, we can do all these things, and maybe you can find community, and that's great. I just graduated college, right? I'm a newbie. I need to pay my bills. All I know how to do is draw. social media, like I relied on Instagram for years to like pay my rent. Like I would post like, oh, I've done new prints, they're in the shop. And like, the engagement on Instagram, even when I had a small following, was decent enough that I could rely on like, making a few extra dollars. Now, like, I need to make sure that post does well. Like, even though I have this large following, there's no guarantee that the post is going to be seen by everybody. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's seen by nobody, and sometimes it blows up, and I have no idea why. Like, I don't know what the solution there is. Like, I want there to be an answer for, like, because this is one of the biggest questions I get all the time at, like, shows and stuff is, like, how do I get social media to work? How do I, grow on social media? Because, like, people see that it's such a good resource to like sustain like your livelihood, and like it certainly was at one point, and it's still trucking along. But I almost think that, like, I know, weird take, I almost think that like Twitter, even though it's on fire, is still the easiest platform to grow on right now.
I think as a static image artist, I think I would still agree with you on that right now. We'll see how Threads performs in the coming months. But I think if you're willing to do short form video, I think I would argue TikTok's probably the best way to get discovered quickly.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, you made a lot of great points in this, that statement, where I'm the same way. I relied a lot on social media for plugs whenever I had a new product, or my main goal was to use them whenever I had a Kickstarter. And it worked for me very well. And my last one specifically, I even threw money at Instagram to help with the marketing. And that one made over 100K. But I cannot even begin to express to you how much I know next year when I do my next Kickstarter, it's not going to make that same amount because of the way Instagram has changed just in the last 2.5 years, where I can't rely on it like I once could. And I think artists need to realize, even for people with big followings, I mean, I have a lot of artists on Social Blade, which is a website that basically tracks statistics on different artists and what their monthly gain or loss is. And most artists right now are actually losing followers. But I would say for most of the art friends that we even have, social media is definitely not the platform it was 3 years ago. And the only things that have really come through for me in the last year for sure has been Patreon, and that's been very consistent, and YouTube's been extremely consistent. And even us doing this YouTube interview right now, like obviously we're playing into that right now because I think we both see relevance and importance in it as a long game solution. But if you are an artist just starting out, I wish you the best of luck. Just know, if this may help even a little bit, everyone's feeling it right now. Like, I have a lot of art friends that have 500,000, even 1 million. Actually, I'm doing an interview with Miles later this month. All of us have been hurting in some way. So it's not just beginner artists. It's not artists just getting into the field. We're all feeling it. So don't take it personal. Don't think that it's the end of the world if you're not getting a lot of feedback or results from social media, because we've all been feeling very weird about social media, specifically Instagram, which was once agreed upon that was like the platform where everyone went and everyone posted to see growth. Right now we're in kind of this weird transition phase where no one knows what the next stage looks like, but we're all feeling the growing pain of being in that in-between phase where, is Threads gonna be the next one? Is Hive? Is Blue Sky? Is Twitter gonna be the thing that takes off? Is like, we don't know right now, but we can definitely feel Instagram like halting pretty hard, and that affected all of us across the board. So maybe we'll have like another talk in a year and like we'll say what we think has happened or what's progressed, but as of right now, it's very fuzzy, and I don't know if I can give a definitive answer as to what.
Hopefully in a year we'll be like, oh, glad that's over.
Yeah.
Everything's better now. Threads, the new king.
Well, I have a question for you, because I know you use social media a lot for pushing Etsy sales. How has that affected you with Instagram not performing as well as it did even a year ago?
So I think a year ago I had a very specific goal on how much or it was like a year and a half ago at this point. I had a very specific goal on what I wanted Etsy to do for me per month. And essentially I wanted it to cover all my expenses, like my living cost. I'll just say the goal was 6K a month. And I had been working towards that for a long time, and we managed to hit it. But Instagram was performing really well. Like anytime I would do a new post, I'd instantly like have, 2-3K sitting in my account if I did a sale, right? So like that's, half my goal for the month. And then the rest would just trickle in slowly. And, those were really good numbers. I was very happy with that. That conversion rate was, I was very proud of it. And then those posts on Instagram started doing way worse. If they would even reach anybody, I would get like maybe a couple $100 in sales from that thing, which still isn't nothing, but it's nowhere near what it was.
Yeah.
So it slowly declined, and it was specifically from like the decline of Instagram I noticed, because like my stats on like what Etsy is bringing me hasn't really changed, but my stats on like the external sales that are coming from other websites has changed, aka Instagram, Twitter, and the other ones. And I'm about, on a good month, I'm doing about 2K a month. So within a year and a half, a third of what I was doing, like regularly. And I think the majority of that is attributed, I mean, I know the economy is also kind of like whatever, but I think a lot of that is due to Instagram, like just whatever, the algorithm's not working, general audiences aren't there, like whatever you want to say it is, a combination Pizza Hut situation, it's just not working, at least not at the way it was. So, and that means I have to go do other things, like I got to take on more freelance work, woe is me, whatever, but I got to do like, more conventions and that and this, but that takes time away from me doing my own personal work, right?
Yeah.
And obviously that's the goal as an independent artist, is like, I want to sit at home. I don't want to work. I want to just paint my little pictures and have a good time. And like, we met that dream. The dream was true a year and a half ago, and now it's not.
Yeah.
So now I'm sad. I want like a viable replacement or something.
Yeah. It's so difficult when you're able to achieve your dreams and then you can feel it like slipping through your fingers. Because then I feel like we all tend to then grip like tighter onto it. I think it's we're all a little nervous. We're all a little scared. And I think it's good to, at least for me, to admit that. And it has been nice hearing that it isn't just like me, because even with your online sales, I feel like every art friend that we've talked to, that's been kind of the same story, where it feels like a half or a third of what we were making comparatively to last year. But usually we see growth every year. And I think the last year and a half has been the weirdest, seeing, post-COVID, coming back from the great con spurt and people spending money during the lockdown to nowadays where people seem to be hoarding it because inflation is really causing some ripples in America right now, where, I mean, I always complain that cereal right now is $7, which seems bonkers to me. So it could be a multitude of factors right now. And I really do believe we're in this really strange growing pain phase in life. And I hope we can get out of it by next year. I will say the thing that has been consistent. So if you're an artist that can get into cons, while they seem to have dipped a little bit since last year, and that's probably because of reasons outside of ourselves, or like factors that we don't have control over, cons have been a great way to like reassure you that people engage with your work. They like art. It's good to know that people still appreciate art out there, because I think social media makes it seem like, no one's paying attention to art anymore. But being at cons has been really reassuring. And I think it's just because social media is in such a weird phase that we will see a return to it eventually. I just don't know what that looks like. I can't even like pretend to know, but I hope to see it sooner than later.
I have a weird theory.
Yeah.
That might be contributing to it. You can tell me if I'm crazy. I don't want to get off on this topic too much, but AI art right now is a big, wrench in the art community, right? And I think like general audiences, like non-artists, like view AI art as bad. But they don't necessarily recognize what's AI art and what isn't. Like us as artists, we see it every day. We see our work getting, used for whatever reason, good or bad. That's a different argument. I don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
But like we can recognize when something's AI, but I don't think general audiences can. And I think that has hindered, the people who consume our work online from engaging with it a lot of times. Like they don't want to go on Instagram and engage with art because they don't want to engage with the, AI art because of the politics behind it, right? But then when we're at a con, and this is my theory, I don't know if this is true. They see the artist, they know it's real. They see the creator behind it, right? So I think there's a bigger connection there. I wonder if this is something that's hurting the engagement online, right? Because, I'll scroll past an AI piece and be like, this is beautiful, right? I might not like it for the reasons it exists, but I'm like, this is beautiful, no engagement. And I'm like, okay, people must recognize that it's AI and not want to engage with that for whatever reason, or, vice versa. And then I'll keep scrolling and he'll be this like shitty little sketch, like by like some newbie, right? And it'll have huge engagement, which is great. It's like, super encouraging. Love to see that. So, it's a theory. Do you think that plays any role right now in the current climate?
I love this theory because I feel like I've been secretly feeling something similar. I guess we'll try. I'm going to do my best to express it in words right now. I see a lot of engagement right now on posts that are simple, happy, and express some kind of a positive emotion. So I don't think it's necessarily about like the quality of the work anymore, because regardless on your stance ethically or morally on AI art, there is a lot of AI art that's being created that is just stunning. Like it is in its values, its color comp, everything. It's really, really good. But you're right, the engagement on most AI posts don't hold a candle to like a very simple anime close-up shot of a face that's, drawn pretty well, but pretty simple. And I think a lot of people are so burnt out from post 2020. I mean, you had so many separations just that year alone, and just people were kept dividing and dividing. I think people aren't necessarily looking at the quality or the technical rendering or what it took to make the piece right now. I think when people are looking for, when they're looking at art, they want a story. They want it to feel personalized. They want to feel like the artist is trying to engage with the users in like a very happy way, if that makes sense. And I think AI is just so cold and heartless a lot of the times. People scroll right past it, even though it's beautiful in a lot of ways. In the art scene specifically, I think people want storytelling to be a part of the work again. Not that it like
they want to relate to it in some way.
Yes. So here's my theory. I think the best way to get seen on social media right now is to have art that is confident and or relatable. And if you can have both, that you're like hitting a home run. I have a folder saved on Instagram of like, I call it one-offs, where on my discover page it'll have I'll discover images that have a crazy amount of like ratio, usually higher than their actual following counts. So if it has like 35,000 likes, they might only have like 12,000 followers, which is crazy to get more likes than you do followers a lot of the time. And I noticed a lot of these images are just very simple, very happy, very bold. And the way that they paint it, it's very, very confident, like very brushstroke heavy. And then it's something usually relatable. Like, 5 o'clock morning, walking the dog. It'll just be something that like anyone could relate to.
So it's almost the opposite of what it was like a couple years ago. Like I would say before, when hashtags worked, you could insert yourself into a niche audience really easily and be seen. Especially if you were doing something that like a lot of people weren't doing, you instantly were a member of that community. But now with that like not being as effective, like you really have to play into general audiences. If like the majority of the public isn't interested in your work, it's going to be hard for it to get the, that initial like ratio that Instagram wants to then push it, or, Twitter wants, or whatever. Or at least that's what it seems like. So the more generalized your work is in a way, or the more relatable, or the more like consumable to the masses,
Mm-hmm.
The better chance it has in succeeding. So like somebody like me who like does kind of niche work, and like kind of like grew off of that, is now going to struggle. So I have to like change it up, right? Or at least that's what it seems like.
In theory, yes. If you wanted to like maintain growth on social media,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in this weird middle ground right now where obviously my stuff I think is very niche, but I was able to find great success within the past. But I don't think people prioritize like how much skill goes into a piece or how creative, original,
Mm-hmm.
because I think they are looking for things that are relatable. So I have, like I said, I have theories about this, but if my advice to a young artist, if you're listening to us right now, if you want to see growth on platforms, I would say do pieces that are very colorful, very relatable. Try to play with that 5 o'clock lighting, play with a lot of very saturated colors, and have it be a little simple story. It could be like a little kid, playing at a pond and finding a frog or something. Like if you go to a very human core on what elements you're trying to express in your artwork rather than like something really gaudy, decadent, bizarre. I don't know if people are super into that as much right now because of what Dustin was saying. I think people are kind of relating it to AI, where like, yeah, technically, objectively, it could be seen as better, or like has more detail, or it's more convoluted in a lot of ways. But that's not what people are looking for right now, because a lot of people may not even know the difference between AI and human-made work. I think as artists, I think we can tell, and I think anyone watching this that's an artist, it's very obvious to us, especially if you look at the hands for most AI-generated stuff.
Yeah.
But at least from my own perception, it seems like the things that are working well are more simple and relatable. So yeah, if you want to see growth on platforms, I would say that's the direction you should go. But I don't think you should alter your own voice to like fit the parameters of what's popular currently, because everything's a pendulum, and I feel like eventually I think we'll see people push again towards niche art. When that is, I don't know. But that's kind of my theory around it.
I do want to say that I think, creating art obviously is its own skill, but social media is a separate skill
Yeah.
that they don't always overlap. Like you can be a great painter or a great artist, and like, if you're not playing that algorithm game, you're not necessarily always going to see success there. So don't think that like if you don't see success on like social media, it means that you're bad or something. Like they are very different skills,
Mm-hmm.
and they both take time to hone. And even now, like I feel like we think about this every day and we're struggling. So, Timothy,
Yes.
Von Art, Mr. Von Art.
That's a me.
At what point did you feel that social media was valuable to your livelihood as an artist?
Okay, so for me, I started using DeviantArt in 2010, and then I started using the Facebook business page in 2011. It wasn't then I used Instagram in 2014. But I looked it up. I was like, when did I actually use social media to like make sales? And it was early 2015, and it was my first Kickstarter. So it was the first time that I used this platform that I only engaged with to like get my name out there and to get more exposure. It was the first time I tried to see what happens if you use this community to try to fund something that I'm making. And at that time, I only had, I don't know, like 1,000, 2,000 followers, but I made over $3,000. And for me, being 5 years out of college, and I had my day job teaching, that was a lot of money for me to receive essentially from social media. And it really put the seed in my head at that time that, oh, this is just the beginning. There is so much more you could do with social media just as a way to market. And I saw that grow and grow. So every 2 years I would have a Kickstarter, and every Kickstarter that I did more than double the last one. And it got to the point where I could very much rely on social media as a way to pay my bills for an entire year if my Kickstarter went well. And it was really beautiful because not only was it for me, but all of my art friends was able to see that same growth, that same level of success, being able to rely on social media. So moving forward today, it's a very scary landscape because what had worked so well in the past, and all these communities and all these followers that we've been growing over the years, what happens if we lose it? Or like, what happens if it doesn't amount to anything anymore? What happens if those followers aren't even able to see your post to engage with something that they might want, like a new art book or a new pin or whatever it is that you're making on Kickstarter or a website sale? So that's when I started to notice. I would say 2015 definitely was my year where I noticed it. And then late last year is when I started to really see the decline. And I think that was kind of across the board for a lot of our art friends. It seemed like 2022 seemed to really be this weird in-between year where we weren't seeing a lot of growth. And then this year specifically, we've definitely seen it go down, hopefully.
I will say I think the first time I saw like any real growth was, I believe it was 2017. I did Inktober. I don't know about Drawtober yet. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Forgiven.
I did Inktober. It was the first time I completed the entire challenge. I didn't follow their prompts, but you know, I inked a thing every day. And then I turned that into a card deck and I put it up on my Etsy. I bought like 100 decks. It cost me like way too much money. I didn't have any expectations for it. I just thought it would be a cool product. And it instantly, well, not instantly, but like within the span of a week, I sold all 100 decks. And that was like, you know, a couple K. And like, I was working at Hobby Lobby for like minimum wage, hated my job. Like, that was crazy to me. And then that was the realization that like, oh, I had broken in to a collector's market that I didn't know existed before. And I was like, wait a second, you can like, there's a strategy to this. You know, it was an accident the first time, but then I think that's when the gears really started rolling, that like, oh, I can make certain products and certain things strategically, you know, to like position myself to not work at Hobby Lobby for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
So that was 2017, and then it was only like growth from there. I think that was a big eye-opening moment. And I still get people messaging me about that card deck. I haven't reprinted it. I think I reprinted it once, but I haven't reprinted it in a long time. Being like, oh, we want that card deck. And like, it sucked. Like, the art was trash. I did every piece in a day. But like, I think like, because it is this collector's thing, because I haven't reprinted it, like, it now has more value to like some of these like people in these like card deck communities. But yeah, so that was definitely the moment for me that I was like, oh, I could take this seriously.
But you know what also probably helped you out with that, and I think maybe even for myself, is we kind of stumbled upon it organically. Like, we didn't know if it would work or not. There weren't YouTube videos on the topic really at that time. And even Kickstarter was pretty new at that age. Like, what was it, 2015? Yeah, Kickstarter was only out for a couple years at that point. So no one really knew what to do with it. So I feel like it was exciting for everyone at that time. And even for people that would follow your work, because these were kind of new avenues, people were excited to go down them. Or nowadays, like, if someone presents a Kickstarter, it feels like there's not a lot of joy or passion behind it as much. And that's not to say for everyone. But everyone already kind of knows what the end goal really is like, people are trying to make money from this. Where I feel in the mid 2010s, a lot of artists were just making Kickstarters to like experiment, be like, hey, I have this really fun idea for a product that I want to make, but I don't have the funds necessarily to make it. Can you help me out to make this product for you all? And that was like a super exciting time. But now it does feel very much like a money-making platform, or like that's the intention. And I think people are better at reading intentions behind things, and that's why even with a lot of social media, especially the younger generation, I think they can kind of tell when you're trying to play the game. And I feel like millennials are probably the most oblivious to this, because we've grown up with social media in a way, and we've learned all the tips and tricks that worked for us 5 years ago. So we're trying to implement these same tricks into new platforms. And actually, this is kind of funny, because with Threads, it doesn't have hashtags as of now. But a lot of artists that had big followings on Instagram or Twitter, they were coming over to Threads, and they were trying to use hashtags, but they weren't even aware of that fact. They were only aware that they wanted growth quickly on this new platform. And it's sad, because I think nowadays a lot of the goals for artists is just growth.
For people who are just starting out that might not have a big portfolio, how do you suggest getting the most value out of each piece?
Man, I feel like this might be an unpopular answer here, but I would say if you're just starting out and you're trying to get exposure on social media, I would almost encourage you to start like in the video format right out the gate, whether that's your short form video or your long form video for YouTube. I actually think I would say short term video first. I think you should really try to engage with Instagram Reels and then have it be a double dip post on TikTok.
Yeah.
And then if you can't actually triple post, then on Twitter, just resize it, because videos do decently well from time to time, but Twitter's always, you're playing the lottery. You never know what you're going to get. So I think my advice would be short-term video. And it doesn't, the best part, well, maybe not the best part, but at least starting out, it doesn't even have to be quality artwork. As long as it's shot well, or it's entertaining, or it's funny, or you're speaking on a relatable truth, that will get the exposure to your work that you're looking for.
What year did you start using social media, like to grow as a business?
Okay, from 2016 to 2019, I saw my account go from 30,000 followers, I believe, to almost 400,000 followers. Mm-hmm. That was crazy, because anytime I did a post, I would definitely gain between 500 and 1,500 followers almost overnight. And that's almost unheard of nowadays for an artist to play that social media game. But what was different is back then, I wasn't really seeing it as okay, this is the best time to post. I'm going to, draw specifically what I think will do well. It was I was able to just draw what I wanted, and the return would be wonderful. And yeah, that fed my ego, that fed into the business side of things. And whenever I would post a sale or something, you would definitely see that reflected. And then I would say the decline in social media happened for me in 2021, going into 2022. But what was nice was seeing that, well, not nice, but seeing that every other artist was also experiencing a decline or a halt. It made a lot of us question, what is our relationship with social media anymore? Because in the 2010s, it was this beautiful thing, but now in the 2020s, it feels like this dying market that everyone's holding on to straws, and we're all grasping at any type of engagement, and it feels so bad. I don't think I talk to any artist nowadays that enjoys using social media. Well, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too, because in the 2010s, especially in the 2015 to 2019 era, it was very much feed the beast, where the more that you posted, the more you would see a return on your engagement and your stats. So a lot of us were kind of conditioned to think and behave in a way that was to post as much as you can. And then in the 2020 era, with short video format being, the thing to do, and it switched from posting as much as you can to only posting your top quality pieces of work and almost running your page like a portfolio. So it took a lot of the personality out of our pages, because in the 2010s, I could easily post a lot of work in progresses. I could even share life stuff. That's unheard of nowadays. Doing a life post as a post, because it'll hurt your stats and your engagement, and the algorithm won't favor you as much anymore. So it strips a lot of what was so beautiful about social media away, because it takes out the humanity. So kind of going back to the bigger question of even this interview, I think the only way a social media platform could succeed is if it focuses on that humanity that was lost in the recent years. And don't knock artists for having one bad post, because then it makes artists afraid to post at all. And then all of a sudden the relationship to social media becomes fear. It's no longer fun or love.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think I've definitely felt that, where it's I don't want to post until I feel really strong about it. But then if it still bombs, the dread. Dread. Posting
an image that you worked really hard on, that you really like and you think will do well on social media, and having it bomb is crushing.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way, though. We shouldn't be that attached to social media where that happens, but that's, the day and age we live in right now.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm very mentally stable. I'm doing great over here. No problems. I'm just
Right.
take a sip from my Diet Pepsi. My good choices. Oh, how do we end this, Tim? How do we end this? What do we do?
Typically
Educate me.
when I do interviews with other people, I kind of ended off with like, well, thanks again so much for joining me today on this interview, blah, 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 blah. It was great having you here. And if you, or something about like, and for those of you watching, you can go follow their, stuff below. And, then you do your normal, whatever Dustin send off you do for yourself.
Great. Perfect. Thanks. You did it for me.
Yeah. Get out of here.
Got him. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. How do I get good?
Yes.